Hey friends, back with another time-lapse video here showing the entire drawing process for one of my cards for the upcoming Fragments Oracle deck. This one is titled Serpent. And if you stay tuned to the end, I'll speak a little bit to the symbolism of the card, but for now let's just talk about the process. So you can see I laid out a grid for this one, and that's largely because I had several different references I was working with as a composite, including myself in a robe, a picture of a snake, and a picture of the moon that I wanted to incorporate into this. So I wanted the proportions to look right, so I laid out this grid. You can see I'm going through and putting in the basics of the outline of where things will be, and then maybe adding a little bit of shade here and there to kind of remind myself what I was trying to do. And then I think I erased most of the grid marks within the subjects after that. Starting here with some patterns and cycles of laying down tone and value, and then blending that, and then pulling out highlights, and then going in and doing it again. You can see here with the snake, I kind of went through and I shaded in where the shadows kind of are, but then I went over that and put in the detail. Snakes are fun to draw. I've drawn several of them. I kind of draw these repeating patterns of diamonds and then go through and add shading and basically turn them into scales through the process of doing that repetitively. And then in the darker areas, kind of adding more of the shade, obviously. And with this one, it's going to need to have some, basically some glowing parts from the moonlight. So that wasn't in the reference, so I kind of had to figure out how to make that look right, and try to think about reflection and that kind of stuff. Just going through here and adding some dark detail. I do this a lot. I go through and repeatedly go over and over and over again. The general process is basically putting down guide marks, then, like I say, layers of tone and shade and blending, and then just doing that over and over and over again, then pulling out highlights at the end. So here I am drawing the moon in. I've drawn a couple of moons, never one this large, so it is really fun. And I didn't want it necessarily to look like our moon, but I did follow a picture of the Earth's moon for this, so it mostly looks like our moon. You can see there for a second, there's cycles of using various blending approaches. One of those is these little makeup brushes, which I find really helpful to get kind of nice smooth tones in. So then I'm drawing the fabric on the figure here. This is something I really like to do is work with textures. And in this case, and usually when I do this, I go in and kind of put in the darkest shades first and kind of work the medium out from those. It's like creases and marks and things like that. And then I use the tooth of the paper a lot to get more I don't know, little tiny details. It's like if you lightly rub with the pencil, it kind of brings out the tooth of the paper. And I have a fairly high tooth paper that I'm using here, so it looks like material of the fabric, not necessarily like a smooth section. It looks like there's actually like detail when you look really close. So I like that a lot with this type of paper. Sometimes I'll put the outline of the background. Kind of helps me figure out what I'm doing in terms of how dark the tones and things should be. It also allows me to finish off a section and say, okay, this is complete essentially. And if there's a fuzziness because it's like further away from the point of view, then you can add that little fuzziness into the edges, and that kind of helps make it feel like complete too. So I'm going through and adding in a night sky, but I figured it's got a bright moon, so it should be kind of not a pitch black night sky. So then I'm going here and adding in basically the glow of the moon using a white pencil, an eraser, and some blending techniques. Behind the figure here, I think it's darkness, and that's sort of related to the symbolism that I'm implying with this card, which we might talk about more in a minute. Did a lot of blending right here, try to make it look like gradations. And then added in some stars and elements in the sky here, more details and some highlights. Okay, since we made it all the way to the end here, I'll talk a little bit about what I see as the symbolism of this card. And as always with these things, I mean for them to be open to intuitive interpretation from anybody using them. So just take what I have as maybe a starting point or what I think and ignore it or follow it, either way. So the serpent is the main symbol in the card, obviously, and one of the key things about a serpent is that it's, snakes shed their skin. So what does that mean for the figure observing the serpent? Is it transformation? Is it rebirth? It's meant to be a little ambiguous, but clearly the observer is watching and potentially learning. So serpents can also represent hidden or even forbidden knowledge. So watching or learning is key here as well. And when I say forbidden knowledge, I mean the kind that alters you permanently, sort of like the serpent in the Garden of Eden, for example. So there's a hint of transformation present as well. And then with the snake, you'll see it's reaching upward. And I was hinting at Kundalini, like unrealized latent power, like striving upward toward awakening or enlightenment, and maybe going through certain levels to get there. And as that serpent is undulating upward, it's moving toward the moon or kind of eclipsing the moon. But the point is that the moon symbolizes things like our unconscious mind or illumination in the dark or that kind of thing. But the moon doesn't emit its own light, right? It reflects that of the sun. So what does that mean? And again, it's open to interpretation. What does it mean to have your enlightenment that you're striving toward be your reflection and not the source? The moon also goes through cycles, just as we do. So think about that here too. And the snake sheds its skin, which is also cycles. And we go through cycles of transformation, as does the snake and as does the moon. So all these things are kind of reflective of each other. And then the figure, like I say before, is watching and learning. They are an adept, and there's awareness and observation, but not necessarily mastery. And that's what the transformation is for. That's what they're present for. Okay, so that's a bit of what I mean to convey with the card, but as with all my oracle and tarot cards, it's really meant to be open to intuitive or relative interpretation. So, one of my favorite things is to hear how people interpret different spreads and card meanings from my Dreaming Eye Tarot, for example, and I'd like to hear that about this deck too. So let me know what you think about this image. How does it speak to you? And I'll be back with another drawing soon. Cheers.